Hello and welcome to t.w.i.c. This week in Childfree, t.w.i.c. I'm Cody Hetzel. I'll be your host today. I do have a special guest joining me and I'll get to her in one moment. But just for those who don't know, this is just something that we tend to do, looking at anything, articles, events happening in and around and about the child-free community. And so if you'd like to submit an article for us to review at a later point in time, we do all this live, so there's no editing. Whatever we read and see, that's kind of what ends up on the screen. So if you have anything you want us to take a look at for a future episode, send us an email to childfreemedia@gmail.com and put t.w.i.c t.w.i.c in the subject line so it stands out a little bit better for us and we'll find it easier. Before we start, quick shout out to our sponsor StreamYard, who gives us all these cool toys for this platform and allows you to see this live as we're doing right now. So with no further ado, I'll bring up my guest co-host for today, Conn. Hey, Bree.
Hi, Cody. How are you?
Doing good. Well, tell everybody a little bit about yourself in case they don't know you.
Yeah, so I'm Conn. I am a child-free wealth specialist with Childfree Wealth. If you've listened to the Childfree Wealth podcast, I co-host that with Dr. J, and we just do life and financial planning for child-free and permanently childless people. I'm child-free. Really enjoyed finance, got into different groups, learned more about being child-free, and kind of like there was a community for it, and started working with Childfree Wealth. So I've been doing that now for about a year, and just getting out more into the child-free world now and kind of exploring, dipping my toes into being a bit more involved.
Yeah, no, that's great. I always think it's a great takeaway for people who are child-free. If there is an industry that they work in, is there a way to like meld that into like a child-free approach for that industry and to get more involved with the community? Because we are a huge demographic of people that a lot of marketing departments forget about. So always good to hear people reaching out to the child-free community in that regard. So with no further ado, let's dive into some articles here. I'm going to be looking on a second screen, so if I'm looking at the camera for the people watching live, that's why. And we'll just see what is kind of going on in the article world for child-free folks. This article comes from parade.com. The heading is, here's what DINK, in quotes, actually means on social media. So this is, again, right now, if you're looking at anything online, it's all about DINK. They're pretending it's a new thing. It's not new. Like, it's just, it's from the 80s. And even then, like, it was called yuppies before then, or it's had different meanings and whatnot. But anyway, and plus there's also a slang term for sink, S-I-N-K, and that's also in the heading here. This is by Kelsey Pelzer. Any thoughts on this, Bree, right out of the gate on dinks?
I'm interested to see what it says, especially how it particularly says on social media, because I think there are a lot of people on social media who I've seen so far who talk about being dinks and all of that, and then you dig more in and they go, well, we're not having kids yet.
Mm-hmm. They're a dinky. So, that's a D-I-N-K-Y, yet. All right, so let's dive in here. So it says, another day, another acronym. When scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, it seems like new terms are popping up left and right, like HEA, and next one is IJBOL, next one is ATP, and the next one is DNI. I have no idea what any of those are. So
I don't
TikTok
know.
people, feel free to jump out there. Gen Z, you guys having fun with the acronyms. That's great. And it goes on to say, it can leave users scratching their head and trying to figure out the significance behind certain words. For example, plenty of people are wondering about DINK's meaning these days. DINK is a term that people have been using to describe certain types of lifestyle, and it can be compared with similar acronyms such as SYNC and I don't even know how to say that. It's SIWAK.
I don't know if that no idea.
You can't even, it's not even pronounceable. We need more vowels in there, folks. So curious about these words, what these words actually stand for. Read on, and I will, and I'll save you guys from scrolling and reading on your own. What does DINK stand for? DINK means dual income, no kids, which can describe a household. Similarly, it can also stand for double income, no kids. Scroll. What does DINK life mean? Because DINK means dual income, no kids. DINK life simply means that it is dual income, no kids life. This typically refers to the freedom without the strict budget or family needs holding a couple back to have a lifestyle that is have a lifestyle of less stress and more travel, or more opportunities for experiences of luxury. Now, what do you think, Bree?
That is interesting. I mean, not everybody, just because you're a dink doesn't automatically mean that you have, money and luxury. So, well, yes, I think those things are shown because it's flashier. I don't think that's automatically true.
Mhm.
But it is interesting, and a lot of the things I have seen, especially some other articles recently, it's like, oh, dinks are just bragging about how they have all these great things in life and all this luxury. So I can see why they put that in the article, but I don't think that's automatically true.
Yeah, it tries to play into that narrative that, just because you don't have kids, you do have the ability to travel, and I guess the term less stress, I'll highlight it here, like a lifestyle of less stress. There's no guarantee just because you don't have kids, you have a less stressful life. Like there, but that's a whole nother topic altogether. Let me scroll here a little bit and see what else it talks about. So what are sinks on TikTok? Sink means single income, no kids. This would describe an individual who lives alone or lived alone without kids, or a couple in a household where only one of them has income and they have no kids. In this line of thinking, some TikTok users are using t.w.i.c, again, something you can't really pronounce, to describe single income with kids. Wait, what? Was the other one with kids? I totally spaced on that. Where'd it go? The t.w.i.c, whatever. You couldn't read that either.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
All
know.
Right. So why would they be using SIWK along with sync? Those are whatever. All right. Let's see. How to use dink in slang. Okay. Whatever. This is kind of like throwaway. That's the end of the article. That's it. Like that is the article.
That was short.
Yeah. Kelsey, love to have you on the show. Feel free to expound on this. Let's move on to the next one. This is from thestandard.com.hk. So I believe that's Hong Kong. This goes on to say in the heading, only 1/3 of childless women have pregnancy plans by a survey. This is by an unknown individual. There's no author. It says local, whatever that means. All right. So only about 1/3 of women who have never had kids before are planning to raise one, at least a latest survey found, with over 80% respondents prioritizing the economy as a top consideration, considering the top consideration factor. The survey was conducted by the Kowloon Women's Organizations Federation and interviewed a total of 734 women. So that's a fairly big pool. Over 60% are under 45, and among them, over 70% have children. Wait, I'm confused already, but so only 10% are planning to have another child. I've got thoughts on that. What do you think about just that little bit of information, Bree?
I don't even know where they're going.
I don't either. Well, one thing that I've noticed with these articles that are talking about like the doom and gloom of society and the declining birth rates and how that falls on the shoulders of the child-free people that aren't having kids. The fact that of these 70% that have children, only 10% of them are planning on having another child. So of the people that are wanting to have kids and are having a kid, don't want to have another one. Like there's something there that nobody wants to really drill into to find out why. They just want to say, oh, this is like the child-free people's fault. Like it's all on us, basically. That's the way I read these kind of things, but we'll see where they're going with their numbers and percentages. They're kind of all over the place. As for the remaining 20% of respondents, oh, wait. Okay, now I see how it is. Okay, so 70, 10, 20. Okay, so 70% have kids. 10% are planning on having, it says another child. That's what threw me off. And then the remaining 20% of respondents who have never had any children before, only 34.9% have pregnancy plans. That is a confusing statistic.
Yes.
So, all right.
A third of the 20% who don't have kids. That was a very misleading title.
Yeah, because I thought I was doing math. I'm like, well, 70, 10, and 20, that's 100, but no, not at all. So, so over 80% of respondents think that the government giving, this is Hong Kong dollars, $20,000 to parents for each newborn can help alleviate their financial burden, but only 22.4% find the move attractive. So, um, I don't know how much that equates to US dollars from Hong Kong dollars, but um, let me scroll a little bit here and see. That's not a long article. Okay, so let's see. The Federation also suggests the government gradually increase the ceiling for tax allowance according to the number of children in a household, with the amount standing at 130,000 Hong Kong dollars for one child households to 190,000 Hong Kong dollars for two children households to 250,000 Hong Kong dollars for three children households. So I guess they're talking about giving tax burden or tax benefits and whatnot for people. But again, even with getting tax benefits, people still aren't planning on having another kid. Like
Yeah.
that's
I
my
just
takeaway.
like I just looked up the conversion rate too, and
Mm,
20,000 Hong Kong dollars is 2,500 US dollars.
okay. I don't know what childcare is
Like,
in Hong Kong, but like that's like a couple of months of childcare in America, maybe. And I'm just going
yeah,
off of what I've kind of read online. So yeah, that's not going to really spur people to have more kids. I wouldn't
yeah,
think.
yeah.
As,
I mean, it's probably different, but it wouldn't cover much in the US anyway.
Yeah, and kind of going back to the thought of like, well, what are governments going to do to help people be encouraged to have more kids? I mean, really, like giving tax breaks or straight up like cash incentives is still only going to take people so far when it appears that like the general living standards of just having to have a job or maintain a household, whatever it is, with a
Mhm.
spouse, without a spouse, it's becomes evidently more difficult when you start bringing children into the equation, especially in multiples. And that's what I just see is that people that are having one kid are just pumping the brakes and being like, hey, I'm good with the one. And I don't know if governments can give enough money to people to really make up for that without completely like bankrupting the government of whatever country it's in.
Yeah, and I don't think people should have children to get money. I don't think that's a good way for governments to incentivize, because if you're having a child to get the money, it's, do you really want to have the child in the first place?
That's a great
Like,
point.
there
Yeah.
are other once you have a kid, there's no turning back. Like,
Hmm.
you have them forever.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I don't know.
Well,
Don't love giving money. Just
what yeah, and in the U.S., we're both based in the U.S. During
Mhm,
COVID and whatnot, we would get the stimulus checks, and like people that had children were getting bigger tax breaks. And so at the end of the year, maybe you know a little bit more about this. There was a whole lot of bragging on social media, kind of making fun of child-free people when people were bragging about how much they were getting back in their taxes with like the increased rate that they were getting because of stimulus and COVID relief. Do you have any 2 cents to throw in on that?
it's been a while since I looked at the exact numbers, but it's really not much at all.
Mm,
So, I think it's kind of one of those easy things that people can pick up on and just blow up into proportion that really shouldn't be blown up to in the first place. Um, if you want to have a child, great. I don't see anything wrong with that. But I don't think that government saying, "Hey, we'll give you money if you have a child,"
mhm.
is a good way to go about it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not sustainable. I mean, again,
Mhm,
with inflation or whatever it's going to be uh, for the countries in the future, I mean, you have to maintain a certain level of standard, and there's so many compounding things. There's the living wage, the working wage, like
mhm,
everything that goes into raising the kid, looking at future education plans and whatnot. It's all consistently increasing, and I don't know if governments have the forethought to plan that out. If they say, well, we'll start giving our citizens money, well, for how long? Like, are you
mhm.
saying this is going to be forever, or for the first 3 years of a kid life, or five, or until they're a certain age? Again, and then you have to find a way to fund that when, yeah, it's just bad circular thinking to think you can just buy your way out of a declining birth rate.
Yeah.
instead of trying to find ways to make it better for the people that are currently here. And then maybe they'll be like, you know what, we can have that second or third kid. And it sounds strange maybe for some people to hear child-free people talking about totally being cool with people having kids. It's like, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think,
Yeah.
Bree?
I mean, I love kids. I think they're pretty cool. So I don't care. Like, I don't want to be a solo parent, which is what would be the reality in my case. That's why I don't have them. But I think making things better for parents, like parental leave
Mhm.
and affordable daycare and different things like that, would be more motivating than just these. Are they like lump sums they get at one time, or
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, good
yeah,
point.
that would probably be a better solution.
Yeah. And
That's my thought.
yeah, and from a child-free standpoint, you know, if things did start to like be a little bit more progressive in that regard with parental leaves and whatever it might be, we can kind of hitch onto that wagon once it gets going, because sooner or later you are looking at some maybe possible form of discrimination of not having a kid and missing out on those benefits that companies are paying for people that do have kids, or the government that's paying for people to have kids. And so maybe like, child-free get a little bit of benefit out of that as well. So
Yeah,
um,
sabbaticals in place of that.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah, it's like, maternity leave, paternity leave. Great, I'm all for it, because then the next thing is like, just general family leave. Like if you have
mhm,
to, go take care of a grandparent, or even like your best friend from high school or whatever it is, if they're
yeah,
ill and you're going to go help take care of them, you should have the ability to go and do that as well. So I just see
yeah,
it as opening the door with parents getting help and us kind of like coming in behind them.
yeah. I think there's ways to make it approachable, so like it's kind of a fair playing ground. But
Yeah.
I don't think this, giving like lump sums is the way to go. Let's do it in a different way so that everybody can benefit and like have a good quality of life.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the takeaway from this, it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction from governments to be like, well, we'll just buy our way out of this potential problem in the short term and not think of long-term options or solutions.
Hmm.
All right. Next article. This is from yourtango.com, and the heading is Man Sparks Outrage with Claim That People Who Don't Have Kids Have More Free Time. How could that spark outrage? I have no idea. This is by Megan Quinn. Let's see how it goes here. A father has sparked a fierce debate after publicly assuming that people without kids have all the free time they could ever imagine, and every opportunity right at their fingertips. People were quick to point out that just because someone is child free, hooray, you're tango.com. Sorry, Bree. Child free is used correctly here. There's no hyphen, there's no space. It's one word, child free. I get so happy for seeing that. And so people were quick to point out that just because someone is child free does not mean that their lives are free from responsibilities. The first little subheading here is the man declared that people who don't have kids have more free time. So this is on X, formerly known as Twitter. An influencer, Alex Cohen, no idea who you are, but you're influencing somebody, posted the controversial thread that has been viewed over 4 million times. And the quote is, "I don't think people without kids understand just how much free time they have." End quote. All right, Alex, let's see how that burns. He then listed everything. There should be quotes around the word everything. He then listed everything that adults without child care responsibilities should be doing to make the most of their supposed free time. According to him, if you don't have kids, you should be, number one, hitting the gym 5 times a week. Number 2, have a social life. Number 3, be working on 3 to 4 interesting hobbies. And number 4, traveling as much as possible. And go.
That is interesting. Yeah, I would love to be doing those things, but
Wouldn't
I
we all?
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I try to do a lot of those, but listen, I have other responsibilities that involve like family and parents. Um, you
So
know,
yeah,
I don't know.
it says this. It actually has an image. I don't know when the image was taken of his X account, but it says it's viewed over 4 million times, but it
Mm,
only has like
uh,
almost 3,000 likes and
Yeah.
1,700 replies. That's a whole lot of looky-loos and nobody actually doing
Yeah.
anything with it, but probably from articles like this. Let's see. He goes on to say, you have all the time. There is no excuse.
Mm.
And as expected, the post caused an uproar. The backlash was swift from both parents and those without kids. Let's see. It goes on to say in quotations, I guess this is from somebody, people without kids can be number one, disabled, number two, over or underemployed, number three, caretakers for others, number four, minding their own business.
I love that. Yeah. Like, there can be a lot of other things that you don't necessarily have to share with everyone that you're doing
Yeah.
and take up time that would otherwise be dedicated to kids. Like, am I waking up to a child standing staring at me next to my bed in the middle of the night? No. Like, do I know some parents who have that happen with their children? Yeah.
That
But
you
do
know
I?
of, there might be a ghost child there doing that. Who
Oh my
knows?
god. No, yeah. Like, yeah.
Well,
I've got.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. You can go. It's okay.
Oh, I was just saying this kind of touches on going back to the first article where like the outside looking in assumes that we just have all this extra free time to do whatever we want. Like and to dictate what we should be doing with our free time. I don't know, it's just interesting. Let's see. One user flipped a script on Cohen with a list of everything parents should be doing with their kids. Oh boy, here we go. Number one, if you do have kids, you should. Well, that they're numbering everything wrong, but whatever. So number one's actually be attending all of your kids' sports games and practices, clubs and activities. What would be number two is have a full and comprehensive knowledge of all your kids' friends and their activities, engagements, and idiosyncrasies. What would be number three is be working on 3 to 4 crafts weekly per child. Holy cow. And the last one is taking kids on as many outings, trips, and vacations as possible. I mean, pound for pound, yeah, that's as assuming as his thoughts are for us, I would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. I don't know.
All right, let's
People
see
can
what.
do things that they don't share and that take up a lot of time.
Let's see. So it's wrapping up here, I think. It says, just because some people do not have children to look after does not mean that they have the luxury to do so as they please with endless amounts of free time. They still have mortgages to pay, deadlines to meet, groceries to buy, all while taking care of themselves physically and mentally. Just because they do not have children to worry about does not mean that they are not caretakers. They could have pets or sick parents, or as I said before, a sick friend. I mean, your neighbor, like, whatever. They might volunteer time at a retirement center. Who knows? Work can even be more stressful for, and it goes on here to say childless adults, because that would probably be true with whatever they're about to say next, as they are often not given as much leniency as their colleagues who are parents. Tell me you got thoughts about that.
Honestly, most of the people I've ever worked with don't have kids. So it was just kind of like, do your work and who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been in an environment with very many parents. And even though I like had a few parents in the environments I worked in, everybody was just kind of like, yeah, as long as you get your work done, I don't really care.
Yeah.
So
Meet your deadlines and do the work. Yeah.
yeah.
It goes on to say, in fact, childless employees are more likely to be denied time off, required to work later, and given heavier workloads per a survey conducted by Resume Labs. And there's a link to it there. So that would be interesting to dive into later on in a different day. Additionally, employees without children are less likely to get pay raises and promotions. Interesting. So I'd like to hear from maybe some HR professionals on that, if there's any true research into it. It seems at face value something that would be correct. I know I've seen a statistic before that said that men who have kids tend to be on the higher income bracket of wherever they're working or whatever they're doing. I don't know if you've got numbers on that kind of thing or not.
I just had to respond to a question about this recently. So I have some stuff written down.
All right.
But what I primarily have written down is, fathers, parenthood, does impact the gender pay gap, but it negatively impacts mothers, whereas it positively impacts fathers, and they tend to get more money after they have children versus not having children. So
Mhm.
I thought that was quite interesting, but
Yeah.
yeah, usually happens closer to age 34.
Huh.
So,
Interesting.
mhm.
All right. I think that's the end of this little. No, there's more. Okay. Let's see. It says life also doesn't have to stop once you have children. I'll glide through this. Other parents argued that they are still able to do all the things Cohen listed that only childless adults would be able to do. Someone in quotation says, I have a 3-month-old daughter. I'm traveling with fam, hitting the gym, working, doesn't have to stop, which I mean is true. I know that's one of the things that people who have kids, it tends to rub them the wrong way when you see, child-free people making, whatever social media posts are about how they're able to do ABC because they don't have kids, and saying that term, because I don't have kids, I can do this. And parents are like, well, I can, like, there's very rarely a thing that a child-free person can do that a parent can't do, like, technically. So
Yeah, I think a better way to say it is easier to do it because I don't have children. Like, it
yeah,
is easier for me to travel because all I have to worry about is, can I book my dog at boarding? Cool. I don't have to worry about children. Um, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I try to internalize like a statement like that. If I'm making some kind of a thought out loud, usually I look at the sense of, if I did have a kid, like, how would I be reacting? So I might say something more closer to, um, if I had a kid, I probably wouldn't prioritize doing that as much as like focusing on this instead. Like, instead of saying that I can do something right now because I don't have kids versus if I did, it's because I feel like maybe I would be giving my attentions more to something else, or it might be, I don't know, a slightly more limiting because of what I feel like the attention is that I'd be giving to, that other little person. So
Yeah.
I think people just kind of, whenever you make it a us versus them conversation, it's gonna butt heads and make people angry. So
Mhm.
let's all work on our languages. All right, next topic. This comes from beliefnet.com. The heading is 4 things you shouldn't say to people without kids. Uh, Smaller heading is, you never know people's struggles regarding having kids. So this might be a little bit child free, might be a little bit childless. Let's see what it says. This is by Lauren McKenneth. So it goes on to say, people who don't have children make up a substantial share of the population, but the stigma about not being a parent persists in modern culture, especially for women. Those without children are seen as unfulfilled, selfish, or unusual. A 2022 survey of Michigan adults found that over 20% were child free, meaning they didn't want kids, while 5% were childless, meaning they wanted kids but were unable to have them. And Bree, I'm sure you've seen this Michigan study
Yeah.
more times than you can count, because it's everywhere. What do you think about that opening statement?
I'm first of all, I'm pretty sure that they refer to it as child free with no hyphen in there. And they specifically say in the first paragraph to not use a hyphen. Um, so that's interesting. Um, you know, I'm glad that there's research out there and it's getting to be more researched.
Mhm.
Um, because it is something like I honestly want to consider it. I grew up in a place where everybody has family. Like I went to a Baptist school from kindergarten through third grade. And like I can remember how pervasive that you have a family, you have kids is. And so to even have things that are child free had never crossed my mind before. But I'm glad that more and more people are getting out there and researching it. And I'm glad that I think it was Jennifer and Zachary who did this study, I want to say.
Okay.
Um, yeah, uh, I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's good to see.
Well,
So,
and yeah, I appreciate numbers and statistics and the proper use of child free. And
mhm,
this again, it kind of goes back to that first article again about dinks. Like, everyone wants to pretend this is a new thing, but the numbers and facts have always been there. People just have never really truly delved into it deep enough, and we all just got blanketly labeled as childless. And it's like, oh, you don't have kids, regardless of if you want them or not, you are childless. And now we're finally getting into some semantics of saying, okay, no, there is a difference in not having kids and wanting them, and not having kids and not wanting them. So that will hopefully help with future studies and articles that come out. So more power to Michigan and anyone else who picks up that charge. It goes on to say almost 10% of that study said they were undecided. Roughly the same number said they want kids in the future, and over 3% said they were unsure. Well, how's unsure different than undecided?
Yeah. It's like those seem to be the same.
Yeah, I would think so. Let's see. So the number one, or it doesn't say number one, the first thing they say you shouldn't say to someone is, in quotations, why don't you have children? So that's actually something that would be beneficial to not say to childless and child-free, I would think. And it's hard not to fault people because they probably are curious and they want to know what box to put you in their mind. Like I almost feel like people want some kind of a justification that you don't have kids. And if they think it's out of your control, you're elevated a little bit. And if you're making that decision, it's in your control, then you're like, oh, you're one of those people.
Yeah.
So,
and I think know. If that question was turned around, well, why do you have kids? And it was kept being pushed the way it is pushed when people don't have children, that is so totally inappropriate.
Well, a lot of times parents will tell you why they want it. They'll say, I wanted a mini me, or I wanted this, or I wanted that. Like they'll give that information freely. But you're right. To your point. If you flipped it on somebody and you really drill down, it's like, well, why'd you want them? Like, it's inappropriate on each side of the fence there. It says most people without kids say you wouldn't believe the amount of women and men who have asked this question, which they would say is personal and invasive, and a question that makes it seem like you should feel wrong for being childless. Strangers may not know the reason why someone has decided to be child-free, and it may not be their choice, so it's best not to ask and wait for them to volunteer that information if they feel comfortable doing so. For myself, I'm at a point now where I'm comfortable just telling people I'm child-free, whatever. And so if I'm at whatever, a networking event or a party at someone's house or whatever, and they're meeting someone brand new, I'll be like, hey, I'm Cody, whatever. And then if they do ask if we have kids, I said, oh no, I'm happily child-free. And that's it. Like I don't get pressed. I don't really get challenged or asked why I don't have kids. I think 90+% of it is because I'm a guy and not a woman who gets the same question. What's been your experience with that, Brie?
I've had people, ask me before, and my answer is like, I don't ever really give an answer a lot of the times because I'm like, at the end of the day, I have my reasons and I don't care to share them. Part of it is I don't want to be a solo parent because my spouse is on the road all the time. But there are other reasons too. And I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, it's nobody else's business why I don't have kids.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's like, well, we can sit here and have a long diatribe about this, or I can just tell you as little as possible. The next thing you should never say is, you'll never know true love if you don't have children. And then it goes on to say, people without kids have probably heard some version of this comment, but it can be both untrue and hurtful. Many factors influence the capacity and ability to love and can take many forms. Parenting can be a source of deep love, but it's not the only source. You can experience this kind of love with friends, a partner, siblings, parents, other relatives, hobbies, or even pets. What's your takeaway from that one?
Yeah, I don't like when people say you don't know true love. Like, there are so many other forms of love out there that you don't have to have a child to have a deep love. Like,
yeah,
it just really grinds my gears.
Yeah, and I feel like this is one of those, like, it's one of those statements that or questions that makes it like a us versus them type of thing. It's like, oh, but if you don't have this and I do, then I clearly I'm experiencing something on a higher level than you'll ever understand because of the way that I think about it. I mean, not to be morbid, but it's like there are plenty of true crime TV shows and podcasts out there that have to do with parents and children. So
yeah. You're not wrong.
I
Like,
mean, I guess like if I don't know,
yeah.
like if I ever said that to someone in response to this, I'd be interested to hear what they would actually say. But I
Mhm.
understand, I guess, where they're coming from with making that kind of statement, even if it isn't like fully thought out, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
like, do you not love your parents, like, or your siblings?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
I don't like, my sibling is like my best friend in the entire world. And, you know, like we care deeply about each other and love each other. Like, I don't have to have a child.
yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
and as we're getting into more things in society with studies and like neurodivergency and the way people feel things differently, like that's a potentially harming statement to say to somebody that you don't feel things the way that I feel. It's like, man, that's pretty insulting. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know what this person does feel, or understands
Mhm.
like that. So yeah, that hopefully this will be another one of those statements that's just kind of wiped away once people think about the inappropriateness of it, and to not use it as like a stepping stool for yourself to stand on and be like, I am vastly superior in knowing true love than you. So stop
Yeah.
using it, people. Let's see what else we got. Okay, this is a good one for you to jump into. Who will care for you when you get old? What are people doing to take care of themselves when they get old, Brie? I'm sure you've got tons of answers for this.
Oh yeah, making a plan and not just automatically saying, you know, I hate the narrative that if you have a child, they're automatically going to take care of you.
Yeah.
Well, you can take care. No, like that is not fair to your child to do that, and like, you have to make a plan for it. And so, essentially, we all should be doing the same thing, making a plan. Who those specific people are in specific roles might be a child if you're a parent, and then if you're not a parent, and you're child free or you're childless, it's just somebody else. Like the plans could be similar. It just whether or not the person in those roles is related to you or not
Mhm.
varies. Like you still need to figure out what you're going to do for long-term care and how you're going to pay for that, where you're going to be. If you want to be at home, you need to have your estate planning done, like your will, your power of attorney, advanced medical directives. All of those things need to be done. So this question makes no sense because you
Yeah.
should be asking the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
And I think Elon Musk had I'm paraphrasing here his
well,
statement, but basically something along the lines that people without children are basically irresponsible and kind of expecting other people's children to take care of them, and that's like morally wrong or something, whatever he used for his phrasing. And there's like maybe a couple ways to look at that. Like what if someone has a child and they're like the most amazing charge nurse at a nursing home? Are they supposed to
mhm,
quit their job and take care of their parents because they can't focus on anyone else? They should only focus on their parents. You're taking their attention away. You're
mhm,
utilizing them, and that the parent, isn't going to get all that attention. Or if he's speaking more broadly about the us and the thems, that if we're not producing people to be future workforces, and then we're taking the social benefits of it with whatever Medicare, Medicaid, if any of that stuff exists in the future anyway, is that fair either? It's almost like they're forgetting that people have to work, like just in general, like people have
mhm,
to do things, and then let alone there's no guarantee that your child will outlive you. There's no
mhm,
guarantee. So it's like, well, who will take care of you when you get old? Kind of like what you mentioned before. Like if you flip the script, it's like, well, if your child or all of your children died, who would take care of you? And
mhm.
their head will probably explode from now having to come to the realization that we can't control the future. No one can.
Yeah,
So, who will take care of anyone when they get, hopefully the kindness of humanity will take care of itself. So, let's see, it gives a little bit of information here. It says a recent estimate noted that it costs over $300,000 to raise a child through high school. So it's not even talking about secondary education. Having children so you'll have someone to take care of you when you're old is a self-serving, exploitive reason to have a child. It's a bit cultural. but it's a distortion of culture and also ableist. There you go. That's another great way to look at this, as it devalues a child who may be disabled or otherwise unable to support anyone. Great point. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways you can look at that to be like, stop saying this. Like, again, this is just another stool for someone to stand on and be like, I'm better than you, and how dare you like try to use my kids for your benefit type of topic. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just gross. It's a gross question.
Yeah, the last one, this is probably more directed toward the childless. It says you can always adopt. So that's definitely not for child-free people. It says it's presumptuous to assume that someone who doesn't have children must want to have them. No one knows the circumstances or reasons why a person is child-free unless they specifically know someone's story. Suggesting adoption to someone who is child-free by choice dismisses their identity and as an individual and their freedom of choice. Even for those who want children but are unable to have them because of fertility issues, for example, adoption may not be their desired path or viable option. So maybe not as in our wheelhouse as child free, but I know that you do work with people who are childless. How does that question maybe, come up to some of them, broadly speaking?
Yeah. Like we don't ever ask why you don't have children. We just say, we have a question that says, are you child free or childless? And you say yes or no. But I do know people who couldn't have children and wanted to adopt and have tried really hard to adopt for over many years, but it just never worked out. So that's really dismissive of feelings and just rude to say.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how hard they're trying, and it might just not work.
Well, and as some people have said that have been, very knowledgeable in the foster system and through adoptions, it's not as easy as people think. Like, even if you're this outstanding individual or couple and you've got all of the accolades in the world and all of the money you could possibly need, like you could still get turned down for adoption for whatever, who knows? Like the person that's doing the adoption paperwork might just not like you. And so they deny you, who knows? So it's, it's not as simple as being like, well, you can just always adopt. Not only do some people not want to take that route, it may not even be an option for others. So
yeah, and I think it's important to remember too with like the foster system, the point of the foster system isn't to adopt children, it's to provide a safe place for children to be while their parents are undergoing whatever is necessary, their parents or grandparents, and just fostering a safe place for them to live during that time, and then reunifying them. Because I did some work in college with like working with kids, and I'd stay with them who were in the foster system, and they wanted to go back to their parents. Their parents wanted them to go back with them. So it's just to say, oh, you can always adopt and like adopt from the foster care system. That's not the point.
Yeah.
Does it happen? Yeah, but that's not the point of it.
Yeah. Well, and again, if you flip the script on somebody else who has kids, you might be like, oh, did you adopt your first child? And they'll probably be like, no. It's like, oh, okay, you have multiple kids. Did you adopt the second child? And it's like, probably answers are going to be no, 99.9% of the time. So yeah, it's just one of those things where they think it's a circumstantial answer that they can just blanketly say out there. It's like, well, just go adopt a kid. Like, like it's as easy as, going to the grocery store. All right. Next topic. This is from DallasObserver.com. And the heading is Georgia restaurant fines parents for kids' behavior, sparking debate on child-friendly spaces. And I don't mind the word child-friendly with a hyphen in it. That's totally fine. The little subheading here is rowdy kids need to eat too, just not at the table next to us. And this is by Carly Mae Gravely. One of those two words, the names. Sorry, Carly. So recently, Toccoa Riverside Restaurant, a seafood spot in rural Georgia, came under fire for fining customers whose kids at the restaurant believed were being too loud. This practice was brought to light after a screenshot of the menu where the surcharge was listed as, in quotation, for adults unable to parent. Oh gosh, end quote. This was posted on Reddit and led many outlets to pick up the story and customers to come forward with their experiences. So let me look at this real quick. There's an image here. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, it says gratuity of 20% may be added to parties over 6. Not uncommon to see on menus. Adult surcharge for adults unable to parent, and it has dollar symbols and nothing after it. I guess share charge $3. Okay, whatever. I guess if you're sharing the food, but so they're going to charge parents, I guess, if they're being unruly. What do you think, Ray?
I guess, can you even do that? Like, this is interesting.
It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, they came.
Yeah.
They're coming to the restaurant for food, and then to kind of be hit on the back end with a penalty for an opinion, because I mean, what's unruly? Like, it's different to different people. So yeah, I could see where this went sideways. Let's see. Go ahead.
I mean, there is a point where it's like, okay, you need to not be running around. Like, I was a server for a while, and those trays you're carrying are usually hot and heavy, and they can easily injure somebody, Even I had gotten cuts at work before just from dropping things. So, like, you do need to be respectful and careful and quiet, but it's interesting that they were putting a surcharge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and not just safety for the child, but even safety for the other guests, because if a child isn't being attended to, I mean, I have heard stories, and I have literally witnessed like kids at like the tabletops where they have like the little look over where you can see the people right behind you, like the kids turn around and then it like pours a drink on somebody's like head, like just, or whatever. Like, yeah, like kind of, yeah. All right. So one mother told Today, which is a whole nother thing because it's got a highlight. I guess they took the story, told Today about an instance in which the owner approached her table to inform her of the policy and berated her for bringing children in the first place, claiming, in quotations, they belonged in a Burger King, in quotations. Up to that point, she believed her children had been on their best behavior and was shocked by this confrontation. That kind of leans into what I was saying before of like what is being like disruptive or disorderly or whatever. Everyone's got their own thing. I don't know. Like, do parents have a superpower where they just kind of zone out the noises and the sounds and the movements of children? I don't know. But it seems like that might be the case here. If someone else came up, especially the owner came to the table themselves, it goes on to say, and thus an age-old debate was reignited. Should children be allowed in public? I mean, as a child-free person, should children be allowed in public? I would say yes. But the caveat is, don't make public your social experiment to raise the child with not disciplining it. That's a lot of words, but basically it's like, don't bring your unruly kid out into the public and then expect us to kind of like be the village and like watch after it, even though you may not want that feedback. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't love these debates. Like, I tend to honestly ignore these things because I think it's very subjective based off of if you're there or not. And like, I don't know how they were all acting. Like,
yeah,
there's a certain code of conduct in society, but if you never let kids out into the world, they're never going to learn. You know, we need to be careful around when we're at a restaurant, and there are things that can break and they can hurt you. And so you want to be careful with the way you handle it. So making a totally child-free society, I don't think is the right answer.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way to reinforce what you're being taught in the home. Like, it's like, hey, when we go inside, we use our quiet voice or our inside voice, whatever it is. And yeah, you would go to a restaurant and like, that's where, it's going to be put into practice, into play. So yeah, I agree with you. I see both sides as well. So let's see. Let's scroll a little bit and see what they dive into here. Someone says, the article says, it's well within a private business's right to implement such a policy. Not all places need to cater to kids. However, some places still should. And frankly, not enough do. Remember the aforementioned comment someone said about kids kids belonging at Burger King. Well, that was the owner. So recent redesigns for fast food restaurants don't seem to reflect that. Indoor playgrounds are being swapped out for sleek, modern interiors. Some newer Wendy's locations, which is a fast food place in America, locations even have fireplaces. Really? Okay. These restaurants clearly would also like to cash in on the appeal of quiet dining experience for grown-ups. Kids are being catered to less these days because they don't have disposable income like childless millennials do. Wait, are they comparing kids to childless millennials?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, even places like arcades and bowling alleys are increasingly likely to be marketed to adults. So while we all agree that screaming kids in restaurants are a problem, let's flip the solution on its head. Instead of creating expansive lists of places where kids shouldn't go, we should be encouraging restaurants that accommodate them. Bring back restaurants with playgrounds so kids can run around there instead of at the fountain, at the fountains at whatever Cane Rosso is. I don't know what that is. Kids are people who get hungry just like the rest of us. If adults have the right to go out to eat, even if they're in the kind of mood that compels them to scream at people, so do children. As for establishments like Toccoa Riverside Restaurant, they should either enact a firm, in parentheses, no kids allowed policy, or find a way to keep peace without being a t.w.i.c. All right. Yeah, it's one of those things where like you do just kind of know if you go to certain restaurants, it's going to be more of a family atmosphere. There's going to be kids there. So it's like you do have to kind of take some responsibility with where you do choose to go out to eat. So
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear what they said about Wendy's and places removing like the ball pits and making it more of a dining experience that's a little bit more upscale. So yeah, if they're eliminating the environment for children, but it's been historically a place where kids are supposed to go, I can see how parents are kind of put in a conundrum there.
Yeah, like you can't really. I don't think there's any place left where I grew up that has. There used to be like kid friendly stuff there, and now it's all gone. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. We got time. We'll dive into one more. Let me go to let's see. This would be one. All right. So let's go to swissinfo.ch. So this is the heading: Rise of Voluntary Childlessness poses a demographic challenge in Switzerland. So I'll give them some leeway on using voluntary childlessness instead of child-free because the term child-free may not be as prevalent in other countries as we're trying to make it here in North America. So we'll see what this goes on to say. In Nepalese society, there is a general assumption that couples must have children after marriage. Due to societal pressure, couples seek different medical treatments if they are unable to conceive naturally. Being childless or declaring that one doesn't want children is very rare. However, in another part of the world, Switzerland, the younger generation is increasingly choosing voluntary childlessness, sparking discussions about demographic challenges. And this is by, Manjimi. I'm sorry, I can't say your name. So, is that who the article is? I think it is. Last name Dhakal, if anyone's looking for this online. The desire among young people in Switzerland to remain childless or child-free, with a hyphen, as some would call it, has grown significantly, prompting debates about the potential consequences of this decision. Some Swiss women are even expressing their intentions to be child-free as early as their teens. One such woman, Celine, a 27-year-old Swiss citizen who has been in a relationship with her partner for a decade. Celine made the decision not to have children when she was just 12 years old due to the fear of the physical changes pregnancy brings. Celine and her partner have firmly decided to prioritize living a fulfilling life rather than being consumed by family responsibilities. I can see like the words that are triggering to parents and the confusion where it kind of muddies the water, like saying living a fulfilling life basically without kids is again like that's like a step stool for us to stand on against parents. Like, well, we're living a fulfilling life and you're not. Like, we got to stop the us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. Anything that's us versus them, I'm just like, I don't like this. No, thank you.
All right, let's see. It goes similarly, 33-year-old Jessica, who married a divorced man 6 years ago, has chosen not to have children as her husband already has 2 from his previous marriage. Jessica considers her pet dog as her child and believes that concerns about the declining population should not be a priority given the global issue of overpopulation. And of course, overpopulation is one of those red button issues of, is it real? Is it not real? Those are articles in itself right there. Let's see. Elise, a journalist in Switzerland, has also decided to remain childless due to a concern that becoming a mother would hinder her professional career, which is true and could also be a presumption. I mean, you never know until you take the path. So to me, it's like, if someone decides they don't want to have kids, you don't really need one singular answer. Like, it's usually like a little menagerie of things that go together of why someone chooses to not have kids. And it seems like society or whoever they're talking to, they try to pick it apart. It's like whatever you give as a reason, like overpopulation, they'll be like, oh, well, the birth rate's declining, overpopulation won't be a problem. Or they'll be like, well, we'll have better technology in the future, so overpopulation won't be a problem. We'll have enough food to feed everybody and whatever. Like, they'll pick apart, climate change. If you don't want to have people for the green reasons, whatever it might be. So if you give people your reasons, they just see those maybe as excuses or hurdles to overcome, to, for some reason, think they're going to change your mind. I still don't know where people go with those conversations where they think that, hearing Bree's reasonings, if Bree chose to give it, and then I'm going to try to I'm going to win you over, Bree, and you're going to become a parent like tomorrow. Like, has it ever worked? Have we ever heard that being a success story?
I don't know. Actually, there's probably a few people I could think of where maybe that was the case, but I don't usually give a reason because I don't want to hear everybody's feedback on it. Like, if anybody were to ask my wife, she'd say, I don't have kids. That's it. I don't need to explain anything else to you.
Yeah. So, and it should be an acceptable answer right there. Many Swiss women are now announcing their decision to be child-free, according to a 2018 Families and Generations survey by the Federal Statistic Office of Switzerland. Here's a whole bunch of numbers. 24.8% of men and 20.7% of women between the ages of 50 and 80 have neither biological nor adopted children. Another survey but again, that doesn't mention really anything about child-free, childless, but or does it? I don't think it does. But
I don't think so.
Another survey conducted by the same office in 2018 revealed that 8% of men and 9.7% of women aged 20 to 29 do not want children, along with 17.4% of men, 26.4% of women aged 30 to 39, and 68.6% of men and 88.5% of women aged 40 to 49. It's a whole lot of numbers there. It'd be interesting to see what that study actually has in it for the basis of what they're saying these numbers are based on. Let's see. The latest data on fertility rate The latest data on fertility rate indicates that Swiss women are more likely to choose voluntary childlessness compared to foreign-born women residing in Switzerland. There's more numbers here. Let's see. I'm just going to scroll a little bit. Let's go to the last paragraph and see where it kind of wraps it up. So let's see. Dr. Valerie Ann suggests that Swiss government should introduce schemes might be a word, but like parental leave, if they genuinely aim to address the demographic challenges posed by voluntary childlessness. Again, parental leave might not be the answer. It might be everything else that we've kind of mentioned before and some. Meanwhile, the government encourages respect for individual choices regarding family planning and refrains from passing judgment on this matter. So, finding a balance between societal expectations and individual autonomy remains a complex issue in the context of evolving social dynamics and changing demographics. So Switzerland's, I mean, it's the stories that we hear all over the place. And again, their answer is, well, we'll just give them time off or more money. And they think that's going to solve the concerns when, you know, again, people that have kids are having less kids. Like, I don't know, look into that.
Yeah.
And then get back to us.
Like, they probably are right, though, in certain aspects, like, you know, parental leave and other things like that, making it more like family friendly in terms of like having children. That probably would encourage people to have children, but that's not going to be everybody. Some, but not everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's where things are forgotten. Like, if you have policies that are more inclusive, like, but also then I don't think it needs to be just like parental. It can be, like we talked about earlier, caring for anybody. Policies like that might help in certain cases. I just don't think there's a good answer, and people are targeting like that. Swiss article was better than the other one, the Hong Kong one.
Yeah.
So.
And it might be the Gen Xer in me, but like everything that's kind of gone on in America with Roe v. Wade and overturning and all of this stuff with abortions, it as like a Gen Xer, like we've always like, you know, wanted to, if you tell us to do something, we're going to do the opposite, like whatever it is. And we're going to find out in the future how this is going to take effect, probably the nearer future than farther away, but basically trying to, you know, coerce people to have kids could have the extreme opposite effect. People who maybe wanted to have kids might not take too kindly to that and then choose to not have kids themselves. And like their reason may be like, what's your reason? It's like politics. Like politics is my reason for not having kids. Like they may want to have kids, but they just choose not to because of the way they see things going in the future. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years, especially with an election year coming up here in the U.S. But that's another topic altogether. Bree, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. How can people find you, reach out to you if they have questions, follow-ups, want to learn more about how you might be able to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me Childfree Wealth. Is everything is our social media. It's our podcast. We have a podcast on YouTube as well. Childfree Wealth is our website, and you can get in contact with me any of those ways. My email is just brie@childfreewealth.com too if you have any questions like that.
All right. Awesome. And Childfree Media, find us on the socials. Just use the little search bar and hopefully we pop up. Anyway, that'll wrap up this episode of t.w.i.c. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and feel free to leave comments and questions on the archived video in the future. Till next time. Bye.